Hey there, and welcome to the second blending mode in our component group. This is saturation. So basically, each of these different components controls a different part of color. So hue, as we saw, is like the difference between red, blue, green, that sort of thing. Saturation is how much of a color we're going to have in our image. So in this case, we're going to be using saturation basically to turn an image grayscale and take a look at some of the other uses of saturation. So let's go ahead and open up chapter 3. We're in section 24 for saturation, and I'm going to hit open, and we're going to hit F4 full screen. Now, the reason why saturation isn't a great tool like in an overall image like this is because oftentimes you have completely different saturations in different elements. For instance, this jacket that we have is way more saturated than the greens in the background, and it should be that way because if they were the same saturation, it would look kind of weird. So let's go ahead and grab an adjustment layer. We'll go to solid color. And here it doesn't actually matter what hue you choose. It only matters your saturation because we're in the saturation component. So let's change this from normal down to saturation. Okay, and you're going to see it's not going to make that blue at all. What it's going to do is it's going to try to make the entire image exactly this saturation. So the less saturated I get, you're going to see it's going to affect our entire image. And the more saturated I get, it will affect the entire image to that saturation, while the hue doesn't make any bit of a change at all. Now, this is a really great way of making black and white. You can simply just bring your saturation all the way down, and you have a black and white image, which is a really great way of doing this. Now, as I bring my saturation back up, you're probably going to start to see, like, this is not a realistic result, right? Turning this off, this looks pretty normal. You know, a pretty saturated jacket, not so much in the leaves. If I turn this on, we're getting something that really does not look very real. Not only that, but it's increased the saturation of our surroundings quite a bit while decreasing the saturation of the jacket. And it's also pulling out a lot of blue levels here in the blacks, greens, and blue levels in the blacks, which we just really don't need. So if you do want to have this affect the saturation of something, most of the time I would select a specific color. So let's say you did want to do that. You can create a new layer. I'm going to go to select and down to color range. And let's go ahead and select the green color range here that's in our, there we go, that's in our plants. Okay, so if we select that green color range, we can now, on my layer mask, I'm going to invert my layer mask, and I'm going to deselect and then invert it again. So it's basically just going to be visible where those greens are. And then here I can then increase the saturation if I'd like. So you can see those green areas I can decrease or increase the saturation. Now, this is not the only way you can do this. Honestly, the better way to do this would be to grab a hue saturation adjustment layer and then just choose your greens and then increase your saturation. That's easier, and honestly, it's more effective. So that's just one reason why, other than converting to black and white and controlling the saturation of a specific color or a specific object in Photoshop, saturation is not something that we use all the time. But it is an important part of color, and for that, it's definitely worth understanding its role in color. All right, guys, well, that's it for saturation. Next, we're going to take a look at color, which combines our hue and our saturation. All right, we'll see you in the next video. Thanks so much.